Today's episode is brought to you by our company, NanoChomp Marketing Strategy and Analytics. We help product and marketing teams solve problems and experience growth using data and approachable AI. Visit nanochomp.com to learn more. Hey everyone, today on the Soundbites podcast, we have a really great guest, Chris Hilgers. He's the founder of Peak Franchising. Chris is helping business professionals and high achievers find opportunities and elevate their performance that can change their lives. He's a business coach and he's been helping with franchise matchmaking and franchise ownership matchmaking. So, really interesting story, great background. You used to work at a company that was kind of in my backyard up in Michigan, so we'll talk about that at some point. But really great to have you on. Thanks for joining us, Chris.
Thanks, Derek. Thanks, Lauren. Appreciate it. I'm glad to join you today.
Oh, thanks for coming. And let's start at the beginning. Like, what started you on the journey? Like, where were you? What's your origin story as a superhero?
So my origin story, I grew up in family businesses in the Midwest. I grew up in retail, appliance, electronic stores, hardware stores, and it just for me, I've been involved with businesses my whole life, and so grew up in those businesses, working all different functions within those operations. Had some ownership stakes, and then went to college. Decided I wanted to spring out on my own, do things that were things that I was doing, the things that I just wasn't really ready to be within my family business, having the growing roots, et cetera. So for me, what happened was, I went to college, then I started in the corporate world. Maytag, Toro, and Electrolux is really where I spent my time in the corporate world, running brands and businesses for those companies, and I just had a really good run. Got to a point though in my career where I'm like, you know what, I kind of feel like it's rinse and repeat, kind of continuing to do the same things, and maybe different roles within the companies and things like that. But I was just ready to kind of come full circle, I guess, and just do different things on my own. And that's where I had a good friend that I looked at buying some businesses with, and it was in the corporate world. Kind of helped him make a move, and then I followed maybe a year or so later, and got involved within the franchise world, with a company called Franchise. I created my own company, but I'm affiliated with a group called Franchise, where I have my own business, and then I have an ownership stake in our parent company as well.
Hmm.
The biggest thing was just businesses, and really kind of getting a feel for running those businesses in growth and personal growth. Where am I at now? Where do I want to be? For so long, and earlier on in my career, I felt like I was taking jobs and positions that somebody else thought I should take. Somebody that was a mentor, that oh, that would be something that you would be good for you for your next step. And for me, it was kind of, you feel like you're on a kind of a fast track, and you feel like if you're not making that next step within a certain period of time, you feel like you're behind, and things like that. So for me, it was, it was working, over a period of time, growing, and then really kind of doing some self reflection in terms of, where am I at? And I had a very good, mentors, et cetera. Had really nice opportunities, but I just really decided to take a change, make a change, and that's where kind of I got started, at Peak Franchising. And
Hmm.
my boss that I had worked for was the CEO for North America for the company that he had worked for, $16 billion company, and he thought I was crazy to make a move, and so that was something that, for me, it's something I really use when I'm working with people now, in that, what yeah, it might sound a little off from what you've been doing before, but guess what? It's your life, and we only have one to live. And that's the thing where, to me, it's all about stories, and what's our story been? What is it now, and what do we want it to be going forward? So that's that to me, and I really kind of, well, I was with Electrolux at the end of my corporate career, and they did a nice job with personal development, and really kind of creating, not only personal development but team development, things like that. And that really was kind of something that got me into really taking a step back and think, looking in the mirror and say, what do I want my life to look like? And
Hmm.
and that's really when I work with people now, that's the first question I ask them is, what do you want life to look like? What's it been? What's it now? And really, what do you want it to be? And then we start to talk.
Yeah, I think there's a ton there. Like you had a really interesting background, and you had gosh, you worked at really great companies. You were part of companies that were merging together, so you saw M&A activity coming up. You had really a significantly stable role where you were at. Like your friend said, like why would you want to leave? This is crazy. So what was that transition like for you when you were going to leave the corporate world and strike out for entrepreneurship?
It was scary at first, because you think about that. Okay, so I ran the Jenner brand for Maytag, and then which is now Whirlpool, which is your neighbors up in Michigan. And then I think about a dream job was because I had a background where I went to school in Germany, and while I was in college, and I had a lot of exposure internationally, and so then I was responsible for Toro's international consumer business. On paper, those were things that and then with Electrolux, I ran different businesses for them. And on paper, there were things that I obviously they were really helpful for me from a development perspective, and on paper it was great. But I got to a point where I'm like, you know what? I really want to do something for myself, and really everything that I'm doing right now. The commuting from Colorado to New York, LaGuardia, Sundays and Fridays over about a 2 year period of time got to be a little bit of a grind, and so that was something that I looked at it and gosh, if I put this much effort into something that's my own, I feel like I'll feel much more rewarded. And so that was something that, I guess I really, on paper, and fundamentally, it seemed like it was something that was happening and going in the right direction. In a lot of ways, it was, but then I just really wanted more. And I think that's the thing when I talk to people that I'm dealing with today, I look at their resumes and I look at their track record, and it looks like everything's going in a great direction. And why are we talking? What is it that you're looking for? That's really what I'm after. And it's just again, what what do you want life to look like?
Do you feel like this sort of career revelation that you had, did that was that mirrored in other parts of your life? Did you like maybe once you made this big job change, other your eyes open to other
Well,
places and that sort of had a ripple effect?
yeah, I mean, I had different things going on in my personal life at the time too.
Hmm.
So I think that kind of
Yeah.
stirred things up. That was like, gosh, I need to take a step back and I need to make sure that I'm doing the right things. I'm a dad,
Yeah.
and stuff like that too. And I'm just like, I'm spending all this time doing, away, and it's hard. I think every time I was traveling internationally, my son would get sick, and all of a
Yeah.
sudden so from a personal perspective, I think that's the big thing with, to me, I think companies can be very good, but also companies are very one dimensional and they want you to be
Mhm.
singularly focused. And I think that's what a lot of us realize over time, that, gosh, you put all that time and effort into something, are you getting what you want back out of it?
Yeah. Because it's not realistic to be singularly focused. It's like there are obviously we have a job, but then there's a life outside of that job. And it's hard when you work for a large corporation to kind of be that present parent or spouse or whatever, dog, mom or
Yeah,
dad.
yeah.
It's hard to do all of those things. And so have you found like a sense of balance, and has kind of running your own
Yeah,
business provided
yeah,
that?
yeah. I mean, I still work a lot and things
Sure.
like that, but then all of a sudden, I decided to leave the corporate world and pursue my own path. And then all of a sudden, I'm coaching my son's baseball, and I get to see that all the way through. He just graduated from college about a year ago, and he played baseball through college, and
That's
and,
cool.
and I had a chance to spend time there, and just doing different things. Now, I don't have any status in airlines anymore. I tell people, but that's okay, because if I want to
That's
buy,
okay.
yeah, and if I want to sit in a nicer seat, I pay for it, and I'm fine with that. And because it, to me, getting, you think that there's a fear factor that happens, and it's like, gosh, what's going to happen? Well,
Mhm.
I tell everybody, that I work with, and I've, I don't just say this. It's just, you know, you've been successful all of this time throughout your life and throughout your career. That's not going to stop. And that, because what it tells me is that, and I I mentioned that baseball is a big, all sports, but baseball, what I tell people is that people that are successful can play on the rainy days just like they can play on the sunny days, because anybody can play on the sunny days. It's just, it's working through challenges and things like that. And when you're in business for yourself, you've got plenty of challenges. I mean, even, we just before we get on today, we had a couple little things we had to work through to make this come together. And it just, it's staying with it, and it's being
Yeah.
persistent and patient at the same time.
No, I think that's great. I really love that sentiment, right? I think one Lauren and I had to go through a training at one point, and they talk about how in your typical day you're going to face about 100 problems, right? And then it's like those problems, they change in complexity, they change in style over time, and it's like how you learn and evolve and grow and are able to solve and face those types of problems is what's going to make it important, and how that's going to determine your growth. And it's hearing it from your perspective too kind of re-solidifies that. And you'd mentioned your airline status, and it's like I think Lauren and I were just talking about this the other day. Like at some point, we have the platinum status, you get the metal card hanging off your bag when you roll through, but then you do the math and you're like, I had to sit on an airplane for 1,800 hours to make that true. Is that okay? Is that success? Is that winning? It's like I
Yeah.
don't know.
There's a trade-off for that, no
Yeah.
question.
So what are you working on now? Let's talk through your business. Let's talk through peak franchising and talk through what it looks like, how you acquire customer base, and what those engagements look like, and what the outcomes are.
I mean, there's not one path. It's going down multiple paths. The first thing is that is taking a step back and really understanding what is it that I bring. What is the package that I bring to people, and what is what's important, because and it's not just me. It's what they need, and so to me it's so important that people understand that that yes, I've got a skill set that can help them, but most importantly, to help them. And
Mhm.
so it's helping people. It's understanding, my motivation. I have a very, very good business. It's if I just chase the business, that's not getting to where we need to go. What's important is taking a step back and learning the people's stories, and really getting a feel for, where they've been, where they want to, where they are and where they want to go. So I think, when I look at my business, we're going down different paths. You look at referrals. It takes some success stories to get referrals. However, you're marketing. You're marketing to the. You're looking at, like, I work with a large group of companies, all different types of businesses, and I tell people, but the most important thing is you, and taking a step back, because you can have the best business in the world, but if it's not the right one for you or me, you shouldn't do it. And so
Sure.
that's where, but really, I think one of the books that I like, that is The Compound Effect, with Darren Hardy.
Sure.
Um, Talks a lot about, incremental um, growth. We feel like you want to hit the home run, but you can't hit a grand slam with the bases empty. You've got it. You have to get, you have to have some wins. And so to me, it's okay. First and foremost, understanding, okay, so what is it that I'm bringing to the table? Then how do I do things from a step by step basis to make sure that I'm buttoned up? Because, yes, it's the conversations I'm having with people, and in the work that we're doing with those people, but they need to see incremental growth, and I need to make sure that I'm buttoned up, and helping to show them that, hey, this is, number one, you're not, you've been in, say you've been in the corporate world. It's not, you're not crazy to want something more, want something different, and not be satisfied with where you're at. And so to me, it's building that foundation first and foremost with the people that I work with, and then really building a personal plan with each of them, and
Mhm.
helping, and then identifying companies that make sense, and then putting the hat, a corp or a coaching hat on that helps them navigate. I'm not in a selling function, and so what's really important is that they see me as a resource and as somebody that's helping them, navigate. And then it's also on the other side, with the companies that I work with, it's important that they understand that, when I send them a candidate, that they're getting somebody that's been vetted, that understands,
Yeah.
they've got the right skill set. It's not just about, matchmaking and, somebody pulling out a checkbook and in buying a business, and then good luck. We see where things can go. It's really important to help make that all happen. So referrals are a big thing. Marketing, I do a fair amount of marketing with people. I've got some other third parties that I use that help to identify people through LinkedIn and through other methods there too, that to kind of identify people, because people aren't just out there waving their hand. Hey, I want to quit my job today. And even if somebody comes to me and says, I hate my job, I say, well, that's not a reason to buy a business. That might be a reason for us to have an initial conversation. Let's talk about that, and let's understand why you might be motivated to buy a business. Because there's one thing that I can't do for anybody that I work with, is I can't make you want it. And that's,
Mhm.
you think about, coaching, and you think about sports teams and things like that. They players have to want it. Look at the Olympics. Both the women's and men's teams win the gold medal in the hockey. What a feel good story. In one case, I think like the men's probably they weren't the better team. They wanted it
Yeah.
though, and they won.
Yeah.
The other one, the women's had to kind of get over the hump because they Canada still had their number, and so but in both cases they wanted it really bad. And so for me, when I'm working with people, it's, I can tell right away. Do they Are they sincere? Do they want it? Sometimes they want it, but there's such a fear factor that there's something that's holding it back, and then it's up to me to work with them there too. And
Mm.
and so yeah.
What are some of those indicators where you say you can tell right away that they want it, or that they want it but they're really scared to make a move? What do you see that maybe others don't see?
Well, the first thing is that, you know, and I respect this. A lot of times people don't really know me from Adam, and so they're a little bit guarded, and so for me, it's kind of it's important to kind of what I do is I open up with them a little bit up front, and it's not this is not about pushing somebody into doing something that they're not comfortable doing. So let's take a step back, and why don't you just tell me a little bit about yourself, if you don't mind? And if somebody might be kind of hard hitting right away, where they're like, they want to get into financials on a business, and I'm like, oh, time out. Let's not even let's not even talk about that right now, because don't get me wrong. We're gonna cover that quickly, but you know we don't need to understand why we're here in the first place. And so that's where people will be kind of guarded, and then they also will be pointed in some of their questions. And so for me, it's kind of, taking a step back a little bit and really kind of help them to understand, hey, I'm not here to try to sell you something, because nobody wants to be sold on anything. And,
Yeah.
and and so that's the big thing, is that, sometimes there's just a takeaway, and I say, you know what, maybe we aren't at the right place in the right time right now. That's fine, because respectfully, I have a very good business, and I'm going to be doing, and I've been doing this for about 15 years now, and I'm going to be doing this for quite a bit longer, because I like what I do. And actually I love it when as people grow and build on their businesses.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And I think um drawing a blank. Like one thing you said resonated with me, and then I just lost it. Selling. Yeah, you're like, oh, I'm not in the selling business. So, I think you're a lot of what you do is your trust development. You're building as much trust as possible, really, really quickly, and then you're in the awareness game. And what's funny, like when we were talking about this last week, Lauren and I had been talking about this a lot for years now. That like we're not trying to convince anybody of anything. We're creating awareness now and then giving people the options and showing what's available without trying to just sell and push a solution down somebody's throat. And I think when you do that, like in your case, you end up developing a lot more trust with that person, and you can have deeper relationship and you can have better outcomes because of it.
The last two or three businesses that people bought through my services were people that I met 3 or 4 years ago.
Hmm.
So they weren't ready at the time, and then they came back. And in fact, I was talking to somebody last night that's moving forward on a business, and I met him in 2023, and it was just timing wasn't right, and that happens. And there's some that I've met sooner. I mean, one of the things that I think that's really it hits home with me, and there's two main mentors that I have. One is Tony Robbins. The other one is Darren Hardy. They both are kind of disciples of Jim Rohn. They take different approaches. Darren Hardy kind of hits you right between the eyes on certain things, and Tony Robbins does the same thing. He does it sometimes sometimes in a little bit nicer way, but both of them have genuine good good intentions, and they've done a lot of positive things. A comment that's made that I think is so important is the quality of my life is my ability to be comfortable with uncertainty. You know, we don't, the more you are okay with, within your own skin, the better off you are, because we know that we're going to make mistakes. We know that, just keep plowing forward. Think about it this way in baseball. If you fail 7 out of 10 times, you're a Hall of Famer. And
Yeah.
so that think about that in life.
From a marketing perspective, I'm curious because you said something earlier that interested me. You said most people aren't on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, I'm looking to like leave my leave my business. I'm getting out of here." What are some effective? You said referrals are great, which make a lot of
Yeah.
sense. You can kind of some risk reversal is already there when someone who's worked with you and would recommend you to somebody else. But for maybe some of those other marketing tactics, LinkedIn is big for you. You said, what are you saying to people, or what does that outreach look like to maybe get them to have that initial conversation with you? When, to your point, I think you said earlier, they don't know you from Adam. So it's like, how do you get them on the phone?
I think that the big thing is that is when you reach out to somebody, um, again, it's not a hard sell. It's just say, hey, you've got a great background, something similar to what mine was in the corporate world. Have you ever thought about diversifying? Have you ever thought about, and don't in a lot of cases, people, they don't want to leave that the comfort or the thought that they're
Safety.
comfortable in it. Yeah,
Mhm.
safety. Because safety, it's it's not necessarily there. We all know that. If
No.
you've gotten to a certain point in your career, you've been affected one way or another, and whether it been directly or indirectly. So for me, it's kind of it's reaching out. A lot of times, it's I'll still use that, even if it's like, say it's on LinkedIn. It's probably somebody that knows somebody that knows what my background is, et cetera. And then it's beyond that too. Is that there's certain types of backgrounds that are more um, that are more apt to look to build a business.
Mhm.
I'll look to see if they've ever owned businesses before, because a lot of times people have owned, when they own a business and then you back to work for somebody else. That's pretty hard, you know.
Yeah.
So for me, it's really kind of it's looking at what their background is, and really targeting, putting some profiling together, and then reaching out. Um, and I've got some people that work for me that are pretty good with that, and they know, they know who some. There's a lot of people that the idea of owning your own business sounds good, but then when it gets down to it, they're not really that serious about it, because you know that safety factor a lot of times is the key.
Yeah, I think there's this Instagram versus reality thing too, where what people see or what they think being a CEO or a business leader is very different. really,
Uh-huh.
really different from the reality of getting in there and moving the shovel. And it starts to change your perspective, and it's like, whew, is this what I wanted? I think that starts to. There's someone that I know used to always say, like, sometimes as punishment, when we wish for something, we get it. And I'm
Mhm.
like, yeah, I think about that. Some of the things you want, once you get it, it's like, oh man, I wonder if this is the right path.
I've had
What are
jobs
some of those? What's that?
I've had jobs that way. You think
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
on paper it's everything you wanted, and you get there and like,
yeah,
ooh, this is a little different than I thought it was going to be.
yeah. This is yeah. Again, as punishment for your good work, you get what you want, which is not always a great thing. Um,
Yeah.
so really interesting path, really interesting ability to screen people, figure out who is a good fit to work with. But what are some of the other challenges? You mentioned timing. Sometimes it's just the timing doesn't work or it's not the right fit. But what are some of the other challenges that come up? And why is this top of mind for me is, Lauren and well, my doctor actually brought this up to me. It's like what they're calling the silver tsunami, right? A lot of baby boomer generation is retiring.
Mhm.
And so they have a lot of these businesses they built, and a lot of them, their children that they would think to pass it down to don't want the business. So a lot of businesses are starting to become available. So, two questions, I suppose. What are the challenges you face, and how are y'all approaching that element?
I would say that the first thing is that when you think about okay, silver tsunami, that's one thing. The other repeat the other one again. I lost it.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah, yeah, sure. Like, I tied two things together on you. The first one was like, what are the big challenges you run into with your engagements? Like I know one of them was timing isn't right, so you have to worry about that. But like, what are the bumps that y'all run into as your business, and then what are y'all doing with this new cohort of businesses that are coming into market?
Well, the first thing is you when it comes to the business, you got to as hard as it is sometimes, you do have to look at the long term play.
Hmm.
uh, because you're going to have you're going to have ebbs and flows in your business. Okay, and then so that's a big thing that I see. Personally in the business that I have, it's just like there's projects, and you don't control timing on everything. And so I think that's a big thing to understand, and that's something that I work with the people that I work with a lot of times, because they want to know, you know numbers, and justifiably so, because you want to make sure, you want to get a feel for, is this going to be a good return on investment. Once you get into that, you're still, it's that compound effect where you're just, it's step by step, and you don't you're not going to hit a grand slam until you get on first base, second base, third base. And so to me, it's understanding, key performance indicators, all of those types of things, so you can kind of at least I can feel like I'm doing some things that I really, that's I can feel progress. And then also, um, being able to show that, and then all of a sudden, so I tell you that understanding that there's going to be bumps in the road, as long as you've, in my mind, I'll give you another way I explain it to people, is it's kind of like when you know where you're going, and you've got a picture of where you're going, and you hit a bump in the road. It bumps your car around a little bit, but if you have no idea where you're going, you're in the ditch and you can't get out. And so for me, it's really having an idea of where you want to take that story going forward again, and understanding where you're at. That's a key. Now that's, so I think that's the first part of it, is just having a plan, and then working your plan, because another thing that I've really heard a lot about lately is that all these strategic business plans, by the time they're written, they're obsolete. And
Sure.
so it's like, the thing you need to be really focused on right now is action. Because if you're still at the starting line, and you got this great plan but you never took off, nothing's ever going to happen. So you need to have action, you need to have momentum. Momentum is a key, because that's how that helps our energies too, on a daily basis, whether it be through work or personal. we need to have momentum, and we need to be building on that all the time. So that's going to help us through a lot of those bumps, and that's going to help us through the rainy days as well as the sunny days. And so,
Hmm.
so for me, building that momentum, because we all get stuck. We all get stuck, and it's just like, so. You alluded to this before. When we get stuck, or when we have failures, winners respond. Winners come back, and they figure out how to. That's one thing that what a Tony Robbins thing. Limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough. I'm in a bad spot. It's just I'm stuck. That just means you're not being resourceful enough, and you've got head trash that's holding you back. And I think a thing that really can help to drive through that too is proximity, being around people or things that help pull you through. And to me, I'm a big believer in that. You don't have to invent everything. That's why people get into franchising
Sure.
is that they don't have to start it by themselves. And I think it's really key, to align yourself with people that can help carry you, and help you, draft them, so to speak, in a race. It's even when you think about it, you're sitting there on a Saturday afternoon in Raleigh, and it's 90 to 120 degrees with lots of humidity, and you see somebody sitting you're at the stoplight. You see somebody there that's they got a sign out there, help as you can, and you look down, and you grab a bottle of water, and you give them a $20 bill. Who did you help out more there, you or them? Because it's like, and that to me is about momentum, and just feeling, doing some of the right things for the right reasons. Sometimes um, we want the end result, but sometimes we don't. The journey to get there is really what's the most important, and working through those big bumps, etc. So the next part of that, this the silver, what did you say, the silver tsunami?
Silver tsunami is what my
um
doctor's been calling
yeah,
it.
yeah, there's a we're starting to see quite a bit of that. And I was, when you think about it, a long time ago, I decided, when I was younger, that I didn't want to be that I was going to move on from my family business, and I had siblings that decided to do the same thing. I would tell you that there's definitely opportunities that are out there like that, and I would tell you that, um, it's still evolving, because a lot of these people aren't, some of them retired a long time ago, but then there's other ones that are still holding on, because they're still working through things. They aren't quite where they want to be yet, and so that's something that, to me, I look at some of the people that I started working with 15 years ago. Now some of those people are moving on, and so there's some nice opportunities out there for people. There's but they have to, no matter what age you are, you still have to run through the finish line. And, if you want to sell your business, and if you want to, and so there's opportunities for people that are out there to 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 buy what we call resales in the franchise world. You do see people that are selling business off to private equity.
Hmm.
I get big into the health and wellness world, and you get these, whether they be individuals or private equity or small groups. What they're doing is they're building empires, and they're adding on to that, to their businesses that they have. They're adding on additional locations, they're adding on additional zip codes, things like that. You see a lot of that happening, with the millennial, or with the, baby boomers now, etc.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where that goes and kind of how that nets out. As we look to wrap, there are two questions that we like to ask every guest. I like to ask this one because it's my favorite. If you could have dinner with the 18 or 25-year-old version, you get to pick version of yourself, knowing what you know now, knowing what you've been through, everything from corporate America, starting your own business, what advice would you give that version of yourself?
Well, the first thing is think big. Think
Mm,
big. How do you maximize your life? Think big. When somebody asked me a long time ago, "What's your dash going to say?" And I said, "What do you mean? What is my dash going to say?" when you die, on your gravestone, you've got the day you were born, the day you die, and the dash in between. So what do
Mm,
you want that, think about what you want that to say, and think about, be big, be big. Don't, you know, you're, you can build something that's just fantastic, and do it your way. Persistence and patience at the same time. Once you figure that one out, you're in a good spot. But I also mentioned before about just being able to live with uncertainty, because I go back, and if I could change something, it would be that, being impatient when I was
mm,
younger, and feeling like I wasn't enough, because I didn't get to that point. And that's that limiting belief thing. I'm not enough because I didn't get there. That's all. That's head trash, and that's
Mm.
something that, working through it, and building, and continuing to build, and really, finding people that are good mentors, people that have got good messages for you. You want people that are real with you, but you want people that are helping you, uh, with energy, in the right type of energy. Momentum is everything. And but like I said before, moment just because you don't have to be going forward at 150 miles an hour, because you think about it, in football, some of the best running backs aren't the fastest on the field. They're the ones that know how to pick their holes, and how to pick their spots,
mhm.
things like that. So to me, it's really, it's dreaming big, thinking big. And what do you want your dash to say?
Yeah, it's interesting perspective. I never really looked at it that way or heard it said that way, but it's definitely something I'm going to be thinking about now. That's really good. And in the history of doing this, we've never really gotten the same answer twice, and that still goes unbroken. So the last question that we've got would be what what's got your attention as far as books, podcasts, movies, media? What's in front of your eyes these days?
Well, I mean, everything from a sports perspective. I mean, I just, everybody. I think everybody's watched. We watched Miracle a couple weeks ago live, but then we probably watched that movie before that, leading up to the Olympics, so we could enjoy it
Mhm.
again. Um, to me, like some basic thing, a lot of self improvement kind of books, or, the Compound Effect is something I go back to, because it reminds me that, that incremental growth. And then you look back, and you've climbed, you've been able to climb the mountain. That's part of the reason, I live in the mountains, and that's why my business is called Peak Franchising. And you see
Hmm.
all this stuff about climbing mountains, because that's the messaging that I want people to understand, especially when you can get to the top of the mountain, you look around, and how beautiful it is. And
Mm,
that's when you think about life. But I think, the big thing there is just is continue. I think growth. And I think I go back, and the podcasts, the Gary Breckas of the world,
mm,
that's the, ultimate human. And that's, again, those are incremental things that we're doing. And we're measuring what we're putting in our bodies, and how we're treating ourselves, and things like that. And that, to me, how you live your personal life is the way you live all of your life, and in your
yes.
business life too. So that's what's really key. That's in it. When I think about, you asked me about making my move, and I felt like I was unbalanced. And now, to me, it's making sure that we have that balance, and we're looking at each area of our life incrementally, and how can we continue to build, because either you're growing or you're dying. And
Mm.
so, and you can grow, you can be a silver tsunami, and you could be growing forever. And so that's the, or you're stuck when you're 24, and it's just like, that's when you have to figure out how to create that momentum, and get around the right energy to help you through that.
Yeah, I love it. Like Chris, really good advice, really good nuggets in there throughout the whole conversation. Really, I'm glad that we got a chance to meet with you, chat with you, and learn about how you got to where you are, learn about your business, and hear some of the advice and wisdom along the way. So,
Thank you.
where
I
can we
appreciate
find
that.
you? Where can people find you?
It will, www.peakfranchising.com.
Okay.
They can see this particular podcast on, podcast.peakfranchising.com/SB for sound bites.
Oh, great. All right, great. I think we'll make sure we link that in the description so we can add access to it. And Chris, thanks so much for joining. We really appreciate it, and we can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks. If I can add one other thing.
Yeah.
The other thing is when you go to that to the podcast part, there's an offer that on there that people can do a survey. I'll or I'll build a personal model, and just really, and then also have a franchise quiz that kind of gives you an idea of readiness. So there's some options there for you to take a look at as well.
Awesome. We love when we get resources for the audience. So really appreciate that. Really appreciate the effort. And thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.